I never thought betrayal would come from the two people I loved most. My sister walked down the aisle in my wedding dress. And the man waiting at the altar? He was supposed to be mine. But what they didn't know is that I'd take more than revenge. I'd take everything. Ellie had always believed that betrayal was something that came from enemies, people you expected to harm you. But as she stood there in her apartment, the smell of her sister's perfume lingering in the air, everything she thought she knew about love and trust came crashing down. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when it happened. Ellie had just returned from a business trip, hoping to relax and prepare for her upcoming wedding to Axel, the man she thought she would spend the rest of her life with. She expected a quiet evening, perhaps even a celebratory dinner to mark the end of her trip. But instead, she found that everything had been stolen from her in a way that would haunt her forever. The first thing that struck her was the emptiness in her walk-in closet. Her wedding dress was gone, and in its place, only the lingering scent of Amelia's vanilla perfume. Her sister. The realization was slow, almost painful, but it hit her with full force as her mind started piecing together the small, inexplicable moments she had brushed off. Axel's recent distance, his odd behavior, and the way Amelia had been uncomfortably involved in the wedding preparations, all of it suddenly made sense. The pieces of the puzzle were all falling into place, and the truth, once unimaginable, was now undeniable. Ellie's hands trembled as she dialed Amelia's number, but before she could say a word, her phone rang. It was Christine, her trusted friend. "Ellie, sit down. There's something you need to know," Christine said in a steady tone that immediately set off alarm bells in Ellie's mind. "Amelia and Axel got married yesterday. In your wedding dress." The words felt like a physical blow. Ellie clutched the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. She could hardly process the information, her mind swirling with anger and disbelief. How could this happen? How could her sister, the one person she thought she could trust, betray her in such a heartless way? Christine tried to offer comfort, but it was impossible to focus on anything other than the sting of the betrayal. The discovery was just the beginning. In the moments that followed, Ellie's world felt like it was falling apart. Her perfect life, a successful career, a perfect fiancé, a close relationship with her sister, was shattered beyond recognition. What was once a dream life now felt like an illusion, one that had been carefully crafted by the very people she loved the most. The betrayal ran deeper than just Axel's actions, it was Amelia, too. The person who she had shared everything with, the one she had loved as a sister, had turned against her in the most intimate and painful way possible. The pain was suffocating, but Ellie's mind quickly shifted to something colder, something more calculated. As she sat in the silence of her apartment, the sting of betrayal slowly turning into a simmering anger, she realized that this was no longer just about her. This was about taking back control, about reclaiming what had been stolen from her, and about making sure that those who had wronged her would not go unpunished. Ellie wasn't just going to sit by and let this slide. She was going to act, and she would make sure that her actions had the weight they deserved. As Ellie scrolled through social media, her heart sank further. There they were, Amelia and Axel, smiling in the wedding photos, wearing her dress, living a lie that had been built on her trust and love. The final blow came in the form of a text message from Bruno, her mentor in business. The message was brief but potent: "Deal sealed. You now own controlling interest in Harris Technologies. Announcement goes public next week." It was a bittersweet moment of victory. She had just acquired Axel's family company, the very one he had been struggling to save for years. What Ellie hadn't expected was how this acquisition would play into her plans for revenge. But this moment was only the beginning. The storm inside Ellie wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about a reckoning. As the rain poured outside, Ellie knew exactly what she had to do next. She would take everything from Axel. Not just his company, but his dignity, his sense of security. The pieces were falling into place, and Ellie was ready to take action. Her next move would be a turning point in a battle she hadn't expected to fight. But this wasn't just about revenge, it was about regaining the life that had been taken from her. The storm inside Ellie was far from over. It had only just begun. Ellie's investigation into Axel's corporate dealings unfolded like a slow-burning revelation, each discovery a shard of betrayal that cut deeper than the last. What began as a quest for personal closure evolved into a meticulous unraveling of a web of deceit that spanned both her personal life and Axel's professional empire. The first clue came unexpectedly. As Ellie sifted through her personal belongings, she noticed discrepancies, documents out of place, unfamiliar names and emails, and financial statements that didn't add up. These anomalies, though subtle, hinted at something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Her suspicions grew when she uncovered connections between Axel's business ventures and entities she had never heard of, some of which were linked to offshore accounts and shell companies. Determined to understand the full extent of Axel's actions, Ellie delved into forensic accounting, analyzing financial records with a keen eye for irregularities. She discovered that Axel had been using complex financial instruments to conceal the true nature of his transactions. Unusual billing practices, inflated invoices, and phantom expenses were just the beginning. The deeper Ellie dug, the more she uncovered a pattern of manipulation designed to mislead investors, evade taxes, and launder money through a network of shell companies. One of the most shocking revelations was Axel's involvement in a scheme that exploited legal loopholes to siphon funds from unsuspecting clients. By creating a series of interconnected shell companies, he was able to funnel money through various accounts, making it nearly impossible to trace the origin of the funds. This sophisticated operation not only defrauded investors but also undermined the integrity of the financial system. As Ellie pieced together the puzzle, she realized that Axel had been using his position to manipulate not just financial markets but also the people around him. He had cultivated a network of insiders who turned a blind eye to his activities or, in some cases, actively participated in the schemes. This web of complicity extended to high-ranking officials, creating a culture of corruption that protected Axel and his interests. Ellie's revelations were a crushing blow, but her determination to confront the truth was unwavering. She spent countless hours reviewing Axel's transactions and the shady methods he employed to cover his tracks. The more she uncovered, the more intricate the scheme appeared. Axel had cleverly used his corporate influence to secure investments from individuals who trusted him, only to siphon off funds meant for their futures into his web of deception. Ellie discovered that Axel had manipulated legal loopholes to evade tax obligations, hiding his wealth behind layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. As the pieces fell into place, Ellie found herself facing not only the betrayal of a man she had loved but a more profound betrayal of the trust placed in him by investors, clients, and even the employees who worked for him. But it was the emotional toll of these discoveries that weighed the heaviest on Ellie. With every piece of evidence, her feelings of anger and betrayal grew. She felt as if she were uncovering the darkest corners of Axel's soul, each revelation taking her further from the man she thought she knew. The contrast between the Axel she had once loved and the Axel revealed by these financial documents was stark. The man who had professed his love for her was now someone capable of destroying lives for the sake of profit and power. As Ellie continued her investigation, the emotional strain began to take its toll. Each day brought a new layer of deception to uncover. The man she had shared a life with had been living a double life, using his position to manipulate not only his personal relationships but also his professional dealings. Every new detail brought Ellie closer to understanding the depth of the betrayal, but it also fueled her desire for justice. The investigation had become personal. It was no longer just about uncovering corporate fraud, it was about taking control of her life, taking back what had been stolen from her. The emotional burden weighed heavily on her, but each step forward in her investigation brought clarity. She realized that exposing Axel's actions would not only restore her sense of justice but also protect the innocent lives he had harmed. As she delved deeper into his past, Ellie unearthed evidence of Axel's prior schemes, a pattern of manipulation that spanned years. The realization that he had used the same tactics to deceive others over the years only added to her resolve to take him down. Through late-night research and the help of trusted allies, Ellie compiled the evidence needed to confront Axel. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and what once seemed like a personal betrayal now appeared to be the culmination of a much larger, systemic issue. Axel had used his charm and influence to gain the trust of everyone around him, all while secretly working to undermine their financial well-being. Ellie knew that exposing him would not just be a matter of personal revenge, but an act of public service that could prevent further harm to those who were unknowingly caught in his web. The emotional impact of this process was not just mental, it was physical. The sleepless nights spent poring over financial documents, the constant mental strain of confronting the truth about the man she had loved, left Ellie feeling exhausted and drained. But even through the emotional and physical exhaustion, Ellie remained determined. The deeper she dug, the more clear it became, Axel's empire was built on lies, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. This journey, however painful, had become her path to redemption. As she prepared for the next phase of her investigation, Ellie realized that while the truth had cost her dearly, it also gave her the strength to reclaim her power. What Axel had tried to take from her, her career, her life, her trust, was now in her hands. And with that realization, Ellie steeled herself for the final confrontation. The emotional toll of the investigation would not be for nothing. Each piece of evidence she uncovered was another step toward the justice she had been denied for so long. In the end, Ellie wasn't just uncovering Axel's corporate deceit, she was discovering her own strength, resilience, and capacity for change. The emotional toll was undeniable, but it was also transforming her into someone capable of confronting not just Axel's betrayal but the corrupt systems he had built. As she moved forward, she understood that this journey wasn't just about uncovering the truth, it was about using that truth to create a new future for herself, one where she could rebuild what had been broken and ensure that the lessons of betrayal would never be forgotten. Ellie's decision to take control of the situation, using both her personal and professional power, was not made in haste. It was a calculated and strategic move, born from the deep sense of betrayal she felt after discovering the true extent of Axel's deceit. What started as a personal quest for closure gradually evolved into a calculated plan for revenge, a plan that would intertwine her emotions with her ambitions. As Ellie began to assess her options, she quickly realized that personal vengeance alone would not suffice. It wasn't just about hurting Axel, it was about taking back control of her life and reshaping her future. Revenge, in its purest form, could feel sweet for a moment, but Ellie knew that the real satisfaction would come from dismantling the empire Axel had built and making him answer for his actions. It was a painful decision, but a necessary one, as Ellie set her sights on a more meaningful objective, taking down Axel's corporate empire. The first step in her strategy was to leverage the knowledge she had gained from her earlier investigation. She had spent countless hours combing through financial records, piecing together the web of lies Axel had spun to protect his business and personal life. The more she discovered, the more determined she became. Ellie realized that the one thing Axel had worked tirelessly to protect, the company he had inherited from his family, was the very key to bringing him to his knees. Axel had long viewed Harris Technologies as his legacy, a company he had fought to maintain, even at the cost of his own morals and relationships. Ellie understood that by acquiring this company, she would not only gain control over the source of Axel's power but also send a clear message to him: no one is untouchable, not even the ones who seem to have it all. But taking control of Harris Technologies wasn't just about financial power, it was about taking back the life Axel had stolen from her. The process of acquiring Harris Technologies was no simple task. Ellie had to use all her business acumen and strategic thinking to outmaneuver Axel's defenses. She reached out to a network of investors and allies, many of whom she had never met but who shared her desire to bring down the corrupt practices that had permeated the company. It wasn't just about a hostile takeover, it was about securing her future and eliminating Axel's ability to manipulate the people around him. Ellie's plan was intricate and multifaceted. She used a series of shell companies, strategic investments, and legal maneuvers to position herself as the controlling stakeholder in Harris Technologies. The process was slow and meticulous, but Ellie's determination to succeed fueled her every move. Each step she took brought her closer to the ultimate goal, owning the company and using it as a platform to expose Axel's crimes. Alongside the business maneuvering, Ellie's emotional journey was just as intense. The decision to pursue such a massive undertaking weighed heavily on her. Every business deal she made, every financial document she reviewed, was tinged with the emotional toll of betrayal. At times, she found herself questioning the morality of her actions. Was she doing this for justice, or was it purely a revenge-driven impulse? Ellie often wrestled with the answer, but each new discovery about Axel's fraudulent activities reaffirmed her belief that she was doing the right thing. The emotional complexity of this journey was something Ellie had not anticipated. As she grew more entangled in her business acquisition, she realized that it was not just Axel she had to confront, it was herself. The power she was amassing, the control she was gaining, stirred something deep within her. For the first time in her life, Ellie was in a position of complete control, not just over her own fate but over the very man who had betrayed her. She had moved beyond being a victim of betrayal to becoming the architect of Axel's downfall. With each new business victory, Ellie felt a growing sense of empowerment. The more she took charge of the situation, the less powerless she felt. She was no longer just a victim of Axel's manipulation, she had become a force to be reckoned with. The strategic moves she made in the business world mirrored her emotional healing. As she built her empire, Ellie also rebuilt herself, layer by layer, until she felt stronger and more confident than ever before. At the same time, Ellie had to keep her emotions in check. While her desire for revenge was understandable, she knew that a rash decision could undermine everything she had worked for. Every move she made was calculated and measured, a careful balance between the desire to see Axel suffer and the need to stay focused on her long-term goals. Revenge, she realized, could be sweet, but only if executed with precision and control. The psychological toll of Ellie's actions cannot be understated. As she delved deeper into the acquisition process, the emotional weight of the betrayal constantly lingered in the background. The more she uncovered about Axel's actions, the more disgusted she became with the man she had once loved. Every email, every financial report, was a reminder of the trust she had placed in him, a trust that had been shattered beyond repair. Yet, despite the psychological toll, Ellie found herself driven by a singular purpose, to ensure that Axel would pay for his crimes. The personal satisfaction Ellie derived from this process was undeniable, but it wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking ownership of her life and future. In acquiring Harris Technologies, she wasn't just securing her financial independence, she was reclaiming the power that Axel had taken from her. She had gone from being a victim to being a victor, from someone who had been manipulated by love to someone who manipulated the system to her advantage. This empowerment became even more apparent as Ellie continued to close in on her goal. She wasn't just out to dismantle Axel's empire, she was reshaping the very fabric of her own destiny. Each calculated move she made reinforced the strength and resolve she had gained through the process. No longer was she the woman scorned, the woman left to pick up the pieces of a broken heart, she was the woman in charge, calling the shots, and taking control of both her personal and professional future. As Ellie prepared for the final steps in her plan, she knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Axel would not go down without a fight, and there would be obstacles along the way. But the empowerment she had gained, the control she now held, was worth every ounce of effort. She had taken the worst of what Axel had done to her and turned it into a strength that would propel her forward. The storm that had begun with betrayal was now a force that Ellie controlled. The business world had always been a battleground, but now Ellie was fighting on her terms. The acquisition of Harris Technologies was just the beginning. What came next would not just be about revenge, it would be about justice, empowerment, and taking her rightful place at the top of the world Axel had tried to control. With each step she took, Ellie solidified her role as a true force to be reckoned with, not just in business but in her own life. The final pieces of her plan were falling into place, and the future was hers to command. Ellie sat in the quiet of her apartment, the faint hum of the city outside barely reaching her ears. The weight of the decision she had made pressed heavily upon her, each thought tangled with the complexity of her emotions. She had always known that the road to vengeance would be fraught with conflict, but she had never fully understood the deep toll it would take on her, especially in terms of her relationship with Amelia. Confronting her sister was the final step in her journey, but it was also the most painful. The betrayal had shattered Ellie's perception of her family, and the idea of confronting Amelia about it felt both necessary and unbearable. The raw emotion between the two sisters had built to a boiling point, but Ellie knew she had to face Amelia, to hear her side of the story, to confront the woman who had once been her closest confidant. Yet, she couldn't ignore the overwhelming sense of dread that gripped her heart at the thought of it. Ellie's internal conflict had been escalating for weeks. Every decision she had made, every move she had taken in her plan for revenge, had been driven by a need to regain control. But the cost was becoming increasingly clear. Her relationship with Amelia had been irrevocably damaged. The bond that had once been the cornerstone of Ellie's life now felt like a fragile thread, ready to snap at the slightest tug. When the day came for their confrontation, Ellie was unsure of what to expect. She had never imagined that this was how things would end, sitting across from Amelia, the woman she had once trusted implicitly, now reduced to a stranger in her eyes. Her mind raced as she prepared to speak, but every word felt like a weight she wasn't ready to bear. Amelia arrived at Ellie's apartment that afternoon, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. The tension between them was palpable, thick in the air like a storm that threatened to break. Ellie struggled to keep her composure, her voice steady as she began the conversation. "You know what you've done," Ellie said, her voice sharp but laced with sadness. "You've destroyed everything." Amelia's eyes flickered with a mix of regret and defensiveness, but she didn't deny the accusations. Instead, she looked at Ellie, the words hanging between them like a dark cloud. "I never meant for it to be like this," Amelia whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you. But it happened. And now, I can't undo it." The words hit Ellie like a physical blow, but they didn't carry the relief she had hoped for. Instead, they left her feeling more hollow than before. She wanted to scream, to make Amelia understand the depth of her pain, but something inside her hesitated. She knew that vengeance alone wouldn't heal the wounds Amelia had inflicted. It would only deepen them.